a virus broke out in the world, and anyone over the age of 13 would die instantly. In the blink of an eye, the world lost all order. The surviving children were taken in by vampires who could resist the virus. These vampires raised them to harvest their blood. Yuichiro and Michaela were among these children. They were orphans in an orphanage before the end of the world, and after the outbreak, they were kept by vampires for 4 years. To the vampires, human children were nothing more than food, so they would treat them however they pleased. Yuichiro couldn't tolerate this. He refused to be treated like livestock. Whenever he saw vampires bullying the other children, he would always rush over and demand an apology from them. However, the masters didn't care about the cries of livestock. They could decide whether they lived or died with a snap of their fingers. Michaela begged for their forgiveness, but just then, a noble vampire named Furito passed by. Furito ordered the vampires to let Yuichiro go. It turned out Furito liked Michaela's blood and had decided to help them. Furito invited Michaela to his room that night. It was then that Yuichiro learned that Michaela had used his own blood to trade for food, allowing the children from the orphanage to enjoy delicious curry. Yuichiro, always having naive ideas, often got Michaela into trouble. So, one night, Yuichiro waited for Michaela to return, but to his surprise, Michaela had secretly stolen a gun and a map. He had planned an escape route. They decided to take the other children and leave the vampires' control. Under the cover of darkness, they sneaked toward the exit. They managed to avoid the soldiers in training and reached the door, thinking freedom was within their grasp. But Furito was already waiting at the door. The children's plans were too naive. The map in Michaela's hand had been intentionally given to him by Furito. Furito's goal was to give them a sense of hope, only to dash it and lead them to despair. Before they could react, Furito drained one of the children's blood. As they fought back, Furito had already killed the others. Michaela blamed himself, grabbing the gun from Yuichiro and charging forward. But in the next instant, Furito impaled him with his hand. Yuichiro picked up the gun, hidden in Furito's blind spot, and aimed for Furito's head. Yuichiro wanted to escape with Michaela, but Michaela, on the verge of death, didn't want to drag Yuichiro down. Yuichiro was devastated but had no choice but to flee alone. Yuichiro ran until he reached the frozen world. Suddenly, a group of people appeared. They claimed Yuichiro was the child of prophecy and that they needed him to defeat the vampires. This was exactly what Yuichiro had been hoping for. He had seen his family perish at the hands of vampires, and his heart was filled with anger. For years had passed since the vampires told them that humans were extinct, but in reality, 1/10 of the population still survived. Yuichiro was saved by Lieutenant Honglian of the Earth Orbital Army and joined the military. Although he developed powerful combat skills, his lack of cooperation caused Honglian to order him to make friends at school. Only then would he be allowed to return to the battlefield. They also assigned Hiragi, a member of the Moon Demon Squad, to keep an eye on him. Because of Michaela's death, Yuichiro withdrew from everyone. One day, Yuichiro saw Yoichi being bullied by classmates. He wanted to help, but Hiragi told him that interacting with civilians would extend his punishment. Yuichiro was beaten and forced to run errands for the bullies. Yoichi felt guilty, apologizing to Yuichiro, but Yuichiro couldn't understand why they were bullying him. Yoichi explained that it wasn't bullying, but he needed their help. He had heard that someone was being considered for the Moon Demon Squad, and he wanted to use his connections to get into the exam. Yoichi's sister had been killed by vampires while saving him, which was why he wanted to join the army for revenge. Yuichiro felt that Yoichi and he were similar, but he advised Yoichi to give up on revenge, saying he wouldn't let him be harmed. He assured Yoichi that his sister wouldn't want him to seek revenge. People like Yoichi, a weak young master, would only hinder the mission to eliminate vampires. Just then, an explosion went off, and an announcement told all students and staff that vampires had appeared in the school. Yuichiro